WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisEye to 44321.
Kyle Kehoe of Neenah is a Democratic candidate for the 55th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Welcome to WisconsinEye, Kyle Kehoe.
Thank you for having me.
So, Kyle, thank you for participating in this candidate interview. What is your campaign's key message? Why are you running?
Well, that is a great question. I don't even know if I would necessarily find myself at this point to where I was at. I started getting, slowly involved in politics. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission for the town of Algoma. I sell real estate full time, so I'm on the Housing Advocacy Committee with the Wisconsin Realtors Association. I started dipping my toes in a little bit. My career, way back in the day after college actually starts in public service as a police officer. I was a community service officer in Oshkosh, and I was a police officer in Winneconne for a short period of time. And, to me, this is bringing full circle. This is bringing me back into public service, doing what I can to help the communities out that I work and live in.
So if you're elected, what's an example of a bill that you would prioritize passing?
Well, in the last 10 years, I've been selling real estate. I would certainly like to work on affordable housing. I think that's not just something that I think that's something that hits just about everybody that's out there right now. But if I were to make it even more of a broad thing, I would even look at considering the way that we elect our officials. You look at ranked choice voting systems. You see it in Maine, you see it in Alaska, and different places throughout the United States. And point of consideration here is, if we start electing officials that really want to start working for the people, and you have a voting system that makes it more, able, or if you have a voting system where the candidates themselves have to appeal to more than just their base, and they have to appeal to the general community, I think that in general we would have a more cohesive state legislator, one that's willing to work with each other and not just constantly against each other. And obviously that takes some steps to get there. But I think in having a voting system in which allows for that could be a good step.
So if you're elected, you'll be entering the legislature during a biennial budget year.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin's projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus.
Yeah.
What would be your top two priorities for use of that budget surplus?
Well, first is education. We have to invest in ourselves. And what better way of investing in ourselves than investing in our children and our kids that have just graduated as well, too, to make sure that we have our workforce folks already as well. So not only should we invest in public education to make sure that teachers don't have to buy their own supplies, that schools don't have to do referendums across every single election just to make up and maintain their budgets, but we have to make sure that these kids are set up for success. If we have people and our children in Wisconsin set up for success, they will bring us all success. We have to create environments in which you want to stay in Wisconsin. You want to be here because it's such a great community. And I already truly believe that. I haven't gone anywhere, and I'm not planning on going anywhere. But we got to make sure that the new generations also feel that. And I think one way of helping them feel that is making sure that we take care of them in terms of their education, and potentially looking to even offer higher education at either discounted or free rates, I think, especially when it comes to the tech schools or two-year universities.
In your answer about the surplus, you don't mention tax cuts or tax reform. Do you have a position on tax cuts or reform?
I look at this money that we have in the budget, and I really do believe that we should use this to invest back into our people. I don't necessarily believe that we should use this money as $300 to $500 tax breaks Instead, I think that we should look at infrastructure, we should look at education, we should look at our DNR services and our water quality services to make sure that we can continue living in this great state without failed systems.
You had already mentioned K-12 education, but I want to talk about it a little bit more because it is such a key issue for many voters. What do you think is going well or that needs to be fixed in education?
Well, I have sat down, so to give a brief summary, this is my first time running for politics, so because of that, I've had to do a lot of learning over the last year. And what I've been doing in terms of that learning is I've been meeting with teachers, I've been meeting with different organizations such as WEAC, and they have given us a breakdown of where finances were, where they are now, and where they should be. We look at special education funding. Special education funding, there's priorities that are set by federal guidelines for us to maintain. And, our schools, if we don't have enough funding from the state, they have to take that money out of their general funds. And this is why so many of our schools are having such a difficult time maintaining, smaller classrooms or maintaining the ability to operate without constant referendums. And if we fund our schools properly from the state level, including special education funding, bringing that from 35% where it is right now back up to about 66 to 76%, it would be a huge weight off of the shoulders of these districts and these schools. And that's such a great place to start. And then we can look at expanding beyond there, and
what does the future of higher education look like to you? 2-year, 4-year colleges, technical colleges?
It's great, and the future, if I were to have my way, would be they're well funded. We've seen some. I live just right outside. They need more funding. We've just. I live just right outside of Oshkosh, in the town of Algoma, and in the news, it's been pretty loud in the news about UW Oshkosh and their budget issues that they've been having over the last couple of years. You see the UW Fox systems that are just right outside of Oshkosh that have had to close their doors because of funding and lack of enrollment. This to me is just such a missed opportunity. This is how you get people started with their careers. I've been selling, like I said, I've been selling real estate for a long time, but I didn't know how to run a business prior to this. It's taken me years to understand how to run a business after this. And if I would have just been able to take, a class, or if I would have went there, it would have saved me some time. It would have allowed me to understand this process and understand how to navigate that process. So I think that in order to set up our kids for success, in order to make sure Wisconsin has a bright future, we have to fund these things better.
What do you consider Wisconsin's largest workforce development challenge?
I would say, I would say it is an integration into our trades. We have to make sure that we're bolstering our trades up as much as possible. I did hear that federally there was 1 million people that signed up for apprenticeships over this last year, and that to me is a bright future. I'm sure we may talk about housing. I'm sure we may talk about a couple of other things here as well too. But so many of those things are tracked back to people working with their hands. Building these things for us, and can we make it a competitive process in order to make it affordable for all of us?
So investing in things like apprenticeships.
Absolutely.
Another workforce question for you. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. These investments also provide an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Yes. This would be very similar to the Build with America policies that our federal government has. Instead, it would be built here in Wisconsin. And we'd be using Wisconsin laborers and Wisconsin workers in order to build up our workforce. Taking our communities and building them up with the people that live inside them.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
I am aware of it. I actually, because of my interest in trying to find affordable housing solutions, I found my way down last November, I believe it was, to the WIDA conference, the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Conference. And one of the rooms that you could sit in during the hour-long period to learn something a little bit more was about worker misclassification. And they talked about how deplorable sometimes the conditions can be that these workers are put in. Not only are they not paid properly with overtime or with wages, at a proper amount, but there's also been instances where you could have 10 to 15 people living inside of 2 trailers. So we really have to make sure that we're treating people with dignity. That to me is, very important. People are doing this very, very hard work. The least we could do is pay them properly and treat them with dignity for them doing those jobs.
On to housing, as you've mentioned already, affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some have proposed government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue that keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability, rent control or building more rentals?
Well, it's probably a combination of both. I think that we have to, you can look at your communities in Wisconsin here and you can see Milwaukee and Madison, and then you see a lot of the other communities that are far less populous than those are. I live in Oshkosh. I saw a USA Today article the other day that said the Oshkosh Neenah median rent is now $1,800 per month. This is a 106% increase over the last 4 years, the second largest increase in the nation. We really have to start getting this greed under control, because I do believe in some respect, I talked to one of my clients that I had, they had a caregiver that lived inside of the house. And I talked to this caregiver, she was a tenant of the property, and she talked about she was a tenant within Oshkosh, not for this property, but she had said she moved to Oshkosh in 2018, her rent was $700 per month for the lower part of a duplex. Fast forward to 2023, the same rent is $1,100 per month with no change of ownership, with no updates made to the property, and no changes for them altogether. And that to me is just
What do you see the legislature doing about that?
So I think that they could look at, implementing rental controls, but maybe allowing that to open back up to either the county or the city levels, so they can take care of it more at their level and not have restrictions from the state government on how to do business within their communities.
Okay. Healthcare.
Yeah.
Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
It's interesting with that one in western Wisconsin. I believe that there was approximately $30 million that was tied up in the legislature that did not allow for that hospital to continue to open. Well, that's a good start, isn't it? Just getting these funds to these hospitals to make sure that they are able to operate at the level. And then we can also look at expanding Medicaid. The Medicare expansion has not happened here in Wisconsin in quite some time. So those are our federal tax dollars that should be coming back to Wisconsin. That's how I feel about it.
Mental health care is also a growing concern for Wisconsinites and for state and county budgets. In your district, what are you hearing on this issue, and how would you address mental health care issues?
Well, I think that we have to have more people that do it. I talked with another candidate that is running for Senate down in the southern part of Wisconsin, who is a mental health care specialist. She's a therapist. And, I asked that exact question. I said, how do we bring this? Well, we got to train more people. We have to incentivize people into the field. We have to make sure that we have enough people to take care of the people that need the help. We have to look at the rules and regulations to make sure they're not cumbersome for a normal average person to get there. We have to make sure that this is not just a field that certain people can get into because the cost of it is so expensive to get into. So in order to do it, it probably comes back to funding. It probably comes back to funding things appropriately and making sure that we funnel that money to the people that really want to help out in solving this mental health crisis.
abortion policy, important to many Wisconsinites as well. How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion?
I think that we need to codify Roe v. Wade. I think it's been the law of the land since I was born up until 2 years ago. To me, I felt as if it was a completely appropriate rule. Not only that, I need to make sure that we codify IVF care. I can't believe I need to say that nowadays. And also birth control. You know, a woman deserves to choose when she starts a family.
Transportation. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Well, we've had some good things over the last 10, 15 years with the expansion of Highway 41 that came through. You know, they're now working on expanding it to 6 lanes instead of 4 lanes in some areas of that, a little bit further north than where we are. The majority of the area is 6 lanes by us. We probably need to look at more public transit, you know, within our area. I'm fortunate to have some Oshkosh within the district, which does have public transportation, but even that public transportation is from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Certainly not allowing for everybody to take advantage of a system like that. You know, we have to make sure that we allow these cities to create the public transportation that works best for their people. And I'm all about empowering these cities and municipalities to do it, because I have worked with those people at the highest levels, you know, within those municipalities, to understand that they know their municipalities best, and they know how they can help take care of them, especially when it comes to public transit.
Environment. PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose addressing it?
I do. My cousin is actually a geologist, and one of his jobs is to go up and check well systems for PFAS contamination. Not only that, I actually volunteered for Snapshot Day, which was just a few weeks ago. This is from the UW Extension, where it is talking about invasive species instead of the water systems in the area. Winnebago County has a ton of water. We have Lake Winnebago, Lake Poygan, we have Lake Butamore, Lake Winneconne, and then the Fox River that goes throughout all of that, moving all of that water. A lot of our water that we drink comes from these bodies of water. We need to make sure that it is being kept safe. We need to make sure that any corporation that is polluting these waters is held accountable.
All right, we have got to the final 2 questions here. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
Sure. When it comes down to it, you know, both of us are, I think, approachable. Both of us will have a conversation with you. But when it comes to the issues, we couldn't be further apart. You know, on his literature alone, he says that he wants to disband the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Well, you can't fool me. I know that the reason that that's on there, it all comes from 2020, you know, disinformation around the election. You know, when I heard that disinformation around the election, instead of going and saying anything about it, I actually started working for the town of Algoma as an election worker. I've actually worked the last 5 elections there, understanding the process, knowing how it works, understanding that there isn't fraud within our system and that it is very secure. You know, he also says that he wants to send National Guard down to the U.S. border. Well, I think we should concentrate more on our Wisconsin issues and let the federal government deal with the federal border, which is what they're supposed to do. You know, I also had a direct conversation with him where he told me, he's also on the Winnebago County Supervisor. He's a Winnebago County Supervisor as well, too. I don't know if I quite understand this, but about a month and a half ago, he voted against grant funding for childhood vaccines. You know, that to me just seems very irresponsible. That to me just seems very short-sighted. You know, to me, it probably stems from COVID disinformation, you know, that makes him believe that way. And you won't get that from me. You know, I'm always going to speak it very straight. I will speak very honestly about the way that I feel about things, and I'll certainly engage any conversation that comes out there. But I will stay true within my morals and values.
Well, final question for you today. If you're elected and you have a magic wand you can use over the state capitol to have just one issue resolved in a way that brings all sides together, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it briefly before about, you know, ranked choice voting. You know, another thing that I think goes hand in hand with that is our campaign finance. You know, I think that everybody is certainly being drowned out at this point in terms of the amount of ads that are being written. Your mailboxes are being full with a bunch of either hateful mailers or informative mailers. And we really have to look at whose hands are inside, you know, whose hands are doing this to our elections. And a lot of times it comes from, really rich corporations are influencing our elections with negative mailers and negative TV ads. And I think that we really have to look at our Wisconsin campaign finance to make sure that it's really right for the people within our communities, so that they're getting the correct message. I think that we could look at publicly funded elections. We could look at a whole wide array of things to make this a more fair process and a more inclusive process to all that want to come in.
All right, Kyle Kehoe from Neenah is the Democratic Party candidate in the 55th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Kyle Kehoe, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you for having me.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.